everyone. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to the very first episode of Voice of Weddings, a podcast by Wedwise. I'm Guinea Kohli, the creator and host of the show, and also the founder CEO of Wedwise. Over the years, being sort of an insider of the wedding industry, I've come across some amazing and extremely talented individuals. Their creativity and passion for weddings are beyond imagination. So, with every episode on this podcast, we'll be interviewing some of the most celebrated professionals and thought leaders of the wedding industry by getting up close and personal and having some really interesting and candid conversation about their life, the wedding business, and of course, their secret to success. This is your chance to get to know them like never before and get inspired. So let's begin. My first guest on the show is someone I truly admire for creativity and dedication. He's a forward thinker, someone who's been able to successfully move outside the conventional thinking and change the rules of wedding catering by offering unmatched and one-of-its-kind culinary experiences. Yes, it's Varun Tuli. Varun Tuli started off as a food entrepreneur back in 2008 when he set up India's first restaurant with his conveyor belt sushi. He was a trendsetter then and he's a trendsetter now. Yum Yum Tree had a successful 8-year run, and after that, Yum Yum Chow opened its first outlet in 2014 at India's one of the most successful malls, Select City Walk. It now has 4 outlets in Delhi NCR. Noshi, which is another brand that he started in 2016, has grown to be one of the most loved home delivery for Pan Asian. In 2010, he set up Food Inc., the catering company by the Yum Yum Tree, serving the best of Indian, Pakistani, coastal, and European Pan-Asian cuisines. So please welcome my first guest, Mr. Varun Tuli. Great. Thank you so much, Varun, for joining us. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Guinea.
So, Varun.
Love advice.
Thank you so very much, Varun. Before we begin, I just wanted to tell you something that, your name is something that is synonymous with the business of food, especially in India. You're a serial entrepreneur, a true visionary, and of course, a trendsetter of the industry. And you're often the case study of most businesses as you've been able to establish one of the most successful restaurants and a catering business in India. So you have a lot going on under this one umbrella of yours, and you're not that old either. So, I feel you're one of the most interesting individuals out there who've really pursued what they love and have been able to successfully manage to make it as a career as well.
So thank you, Guinea. I don't know how, I'm worthy of all those words, but I think we just got very fortunate. I think we just were lucky enough to be able to do what we wanted to do right in the beginning. And we had certain opportunities. Certain things have to be attributed to luck. Certain things have to be attributed to opportunity. I think when certain opportunities come their way, we should actually figure out, how to make the most of those opportunities. A lot of people are pretty upset with the entire coronavirus situation, and I always tell them that there could be certain opportunities that you could find in this, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that while the world is sleeping, if you can actually step in and do something which is unique, there'll always be a time where the switch will flip. And I can give your example. I think when you started Wedwise, you were way ahead of your time. That people never thought that wedding related content would be consumable online, and that was fairly new, and you were a kind of a leader in that space, so to speak. Today it's been accelerated. Coronavirus has made it almost mandatory for everything to be consumed online. So
absolutely,
I think if you have conviction in what you do, you may not see results immediately. I think that you just need to persevere and make sure that, listen, this is what I believe in, and because I believe in this is what I'm going to do. And I really think trying to, if we try and follow people, I don't think anything will come out of it. So I think it's nice to follow people for inspiration. It's nice to follow people to kind of appreciate and like what they're doing. But I think trying to just do what you like to do and what you feel is going to work is really what. And I think what's very important is to do what you like more than what will be successful. You can never gauge what will be successful. You can't say tomorrow that, listen, I should get into the mask business because everybody will be buying masks. You don't know when the opportunity will come in, right? If you enjoy making masks, you should get into the mask business then. If you understand the nuances of that, you should get into that. So similarly, I think in every category in the wedding business, even within food, there are so many categories, subcategories within food. You could just be a bartender. You could just be somebody who does desserts. You could be somebody who takes care of just Indian food, right? And it's not necessary to want to do everything all the time. So I think it's very, very important to understand what you like to do and what your
find that
skills
niche
and strengths.
to
Yes,
excel.
and what your skills and strengths are. I think we had a very clear vision when we started catering. At that point we had an Asian restaurant by the name of Yum Yum Tree, and when we started Food Inc. In the first few years, we were very clear we wanted to get into weddings, and we could not get into weddings with only Asian food. We had to make sure that we gave Indian food to people. And I think in the first few years, we would actually price our Indian menus much below what an Asian menu would be priced at, and almost force people to take Indian menus or just throw in two or three Indian dishes free, even if they were taking Asian menus from us, right? And we could make excuses like the elders in the family would want it. With drinks you'd enjoy Indian food. People think that on a dining table Indian food kind of sits better. So we made various excuses and just made sure at whatever cost. It cost us a lot of money to bring Indian food to people. But I think we were clear that till people don't associate Indian food with us, we won't get anywhere.
Absolutely. So again, I would like to believe whatever you touch turns into gold, because everything that you started, and I think I'll tell you why that happened. Why I say that is because every time you launch something, one realizes, wow, there was this gap in the market, and with the first mover advantage, you grab that opportunity and you absolutely own it. So I wanted to understand what inspires you to sort of come up with these innovative products every time, which is with your restaurants or the catering business. So what really inspires you? What is that secret of success of yours?
So, Ginny, I think that that's absolutely not true that everything that I touch turns to gold. I think we've had our fair share of failures. I think we've gone through a lot of things. We've gone through many, many, failures. We've gone through many, many trials and tribulations. Um, but I think till you don't fail, you won't learn anything, right? We're about to launch an Indian delivery brand. We're about to launch a European delivery brand. We don't know how well or badly they will do. It's not absolutely correct that everything that I touch. I think what we have focused on is that what we knew well, at least for example in the restaurant space, we stuck to Asian for a very long time. Even though in catering we knew Indian was working, we didn't try and kind of lose focus of that. So I think the idea is also to be focused, because it requires a lot of discipline to say, listen, I'm doing all these different cuisines in catering. Why can't I just go ahead and open 10 new restaurants with it? And so many people told us, open an Indian restaurant, open an Italian restaurant. We never did it. We are going to open an Italian restaurant next, but that is after 12 years. For 12 years, we've only had an Indian restaurant, 12 and a half years. And by the time we open it, it will be 13 years of only Asian restaurants, right? And by the time we do an Indian delivery brand, it will be after about 10 years of doing Indian food and catering. So the idea is that 10 years is a lot of time. After 10 years, I think you kind of learn something well in 10 years, and then you can kind of take that point forward. So the idea is that anybody who's wanting to start out, I think first they should just understand what they like. Do they like not being able to sleep at night? Do they like working 24 hours a day? You know, so you got to ask yourself these questions. Do you really get motivated by your work so much that you're open to doing it, all day and all night? If you're open to doing it all day and all night,
Absolutely. And which I think brings me to asking you, you're not a trained chef. You don't come from a background of food. If I've got this right, you're an industrial engineer and you worked as a financial analyst with Lehman Brothers in New York. But your first venture actually was way back in college when you started off working as company where you were providing students to the PhD students, undergrad students to the PhD students, and it was called the Office for Technical Consulting Resources.
So we were doing consulting. So just like an Accenture or a McKinsey or a BCG or Bain would consult, we basically came in as consultants for companies, and
Right.
PhD students and master students and even undergraduate students for that matter were essentially our staff, and we would basically do a project. Let's say somebody wants to make like Microsoft wanted to make a knowledge base more popular. We kind of did the project where we found out the feasibility study of it. When voice over IP came in first, where communication over phones came in first, we were one of the first to publish a project which said that at the current bandwidth, it would not work out. Mitsubishi wanted to do a touch screen. We were able to do a touch screen, which was a 12 foot by 12 foot touch screen, with various cameras on it. So we were basically doing larger consulting companies, someone like Accenture or Bain would basically do a quality assurance on us.
Sure. So basically, the entrepreneurial bug really bit you long back, not just when you started your restaurant business. And so, if I also got it right, you're actually a true example also of things when people say a degree does not define your passion or your career. And you actually stand true for that one as well. I mean, a lot of young entrepreneurs sort of want to stick down with their degree and sort of continue working in the career that they've been studying around, and they don't want to sort of pursue their passion as early as say 18 or 19 in their lives. But you sort of started way early. Was it, when did you give us a little idea on when you first started and what really got you into the food business?
So I've been, so firstly, as far as education is concerned, I think, every education that you have has some kind of output in what you do, right? So engineering means there's discipline. Like today, I can't do anything without a recipe. I can't do anything without a process. Engineering teaches you that, right? Similarly, if you did, for example, hotel management and you tomorrow started to kind of do acting, for example, I'm sure hotel management would teach you something about acting as well, right? So no, it can be any random education with any random career, and yet there would be some kind of learning from that, right? So I definitely think that is something that you can't ignore. You can't say that I've studied something and I can't kind of go ahead and do that. And what was your second question again?
My question was, what made you start get into the food business? You, of course, your passion is there, but what was that paradigm shift that you had in your life, and why did you have that?
Yeah. So I have been cooking since I was maybe 8 years old, right? So I've been cooking since I was a kid. My mom used to cook, food all the time. She would make a lot of Chinese food. She would make a lot of desserts. Maybe that was part of my kind of influence in there. I started kind of enjoying making something as simple as eggs, right? So just understanding what would make a nice omelette or scrambled eggs, and that was one of my first kind of things that I would do, right? I would kind of be told all the time that boys don't cook, so why are you kind of cooking? So that kind of didn't give me that much motivation. As we grew up, there was a lot of cable TV came in. A lot of food shows started coming on. So I would watch a lot of food shows. When I went to the US to study, there were also a lot of food shows there. And when I was when I was in my apartment with my friends, I would miss Indian food, and I would never get Indian food of the caliber or level that you would get in India. At least in the US, I would never get that. So I started kind of experimenting with how to make basic Indian food, how to make a rajma, a dal, a chicken curry, etc. So I think starting from 8 years old all the way up to college, to between about, let's say, 8 and 20, there were various phases in which I consumed food shows. I kind of made food. So that kind of food was something that always excited me. Food was something that was something that was a hobby of sorts, right? I would be very, very interested in how food is prepared, why things taste a certain way, how to get ingredients, how to kind of substitute ingredients if you can't get ingredients in certain dishes. So I think food science, so to speak, if that was a subject, would have been the choice of subject for me, if I had to go back.
That's amazing, because that tells us exactly what differentiates you from the rest of the players in the industry. Now, another thing I would like to point out now, because we are a wedding podcast, we would like to shift a little on the wedding front as well. And because you have one of the most successful wedding catering companies, Food Inc., I think it's something that it does. The work that it does is absolutely spectacular. The kind of, I think, the work that you've put in terms of bringing the not just the opulence of the setup, but also the diversity and the taste in the cuisines that you offer is perhaps something that has never been experienced in Indian weddings. So I wanted to ask you, what is it that your company does to really outsell the competitors? What is it you do? What outsells you from the rest of the world?
So I think one of the first things that kind of differentiates us is that we're not a one size fits all company. We're not somebody who kind of does every event the same way. We are a very simple customized solution, right? For any event, every single event stands out. Every single event is different from the previous event. So one of the a lot of people, what they feel is that a wedding is a wedding is a wedding. You might just might as well do the same menu in all the events, right? And there are people who kind of do a lot of events where they do the same menu over 20 days. They'll do the same menu every single day, and they are also able to achieve lower costs with that, because it's the same menu repeating every day. And there is a market for that, and there are people who want a grand menu with everything under the table. But we don't call that our USP. So our first USP is that we customize solutions. The second USP is that we make sure that we give the correct experience, right? So if we cannot do something, we actually get somebody from outside to come in and do it, right? So if somebody wants Amritsari fish, and we believe that Makhan fish is the best place to get Amritsari fish, we'll have Makhan fish themselves come in to do it, right? There's no point trying to copy something. Somebody's doing something for 50 years. It's impossible to kind of just copy exactly what they're doing. Neither does anybody want to. So I think we're very open to collaboration. We're very open to bringing in people who know what they do. So customization is one, collaboration is number two. Number three, which is also an extension of collaboration, is we really try and understand the family that we are working with. We try and understand their friends. We try and understand their family. We understand, their culture. Do they like to eat early or late? Do they like, heavy food or lighter food? Are there a lot of younger people in the crowd? Are there a lot of older people in the crowd? What kind of preferences? Are they all vegetarian? Do they eat onion and garlic? So there are various things that you've got to understand. And by the time we actually present the food, we already know what 80% of the people are eating. So that kind of gives us a little bit of an edge, that you're almost customizing the food to every kind of
The life of the guests, really.
the fourth thing that would differentiate us would be, like, I think we do a lot of live cooking. We try our level best to avoid chafing dishes. We kind of make sure that every dish is prepared by hand, and we also at the same time ensure that there is no waiting. So if we have to have 25 roti stations for a 2,000 person wedding, we'll have 25 roti stations. All 25 roti stations would prepare different rotis, not the same roti. But you would never have to wait, and you'll always get a fresh and hot roti. So I think there are very small things that kind of help differentiate us from the larger kind of crowd. And we are also somebody who believes in certain cuisines, certain styles of cooking. Like, I don't believe in pasta from a packet. I think we should, pasta should be made fresh. I think dal makhani should only be made with a black dal. A lot of people mix 3-4 types of dal in a black, in a dal makhani. A lot of people use a lot of oil and cream and butter. We try and stay away from certain ingredients. We try and be as close to nature as possible in our ingredients. So there are various small things that differentiate us as well.
Awesome. So tell me something. Of course, you've seen a lot of people in India have sort of ventured into this catering business. What, according to you, because you've have a few experiences here in terms of the failures that you've talked about. You've talked about your experiences in terms of collaborating and customizing. What do you think people get wrong when they're starting a wedding catering business?
I think the biggest thing that they get wrong is that they are starting a wedding catering business. I think nobody can go from today, with coronavirus, it's a first of sorts where most weddings are restricted to 50 people, right? But essentially a wedding in India is about 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 people, right? Nobody can say that from day one I want to do 2,000 people, right? And everybody thinks that from day one they'll kind of go ahead and do 2,000 people. So When you're starting a wedding catering business, you have to understand that in a wedding, even if the wedding is 1,000 people, there will be a mehendi and there will be a cocktail, right? And you as a first time caterer cannot do a mehendi, you cannot do a cocktail, you cannot do a wedding because people may not trust you for the three main functions. So you start exploring what else is there. There is the morning of the wedding, for example, right? So there is the sense function or the chuda function. There is the open house.
The smaller functions to start with.
Absolutely. So wedding related is what, if you want to get into a wedding business, you go wedding related. You tell a client that listen, you will have guests staying in your house, every day, or people coming over to your house every day. There'll be dance practices that will happen every day. So why can't we do those first, right? I think rather than trying to pitch to every single client that let us do your wedding and I want to be the wedding caterer and have my name out there on day one, I think that would be the biggest mistake. You can't just say I'm a wedding caterer. And in the process, if you feel that the birthday parties and anniversaries and corporate events are more lucrative, maybe you become a corporate caterer. Maybe you don't become a wedding caterer. So I think you need to be very open. I think that what you're trying to achieve is a final goal. I think a final goal is a process.
That's so informative. Thank you so much, Varun. I think that makes a lot of sense. And wedding related businesses should be the first stepping stone for anybody who's trying to get into this catering business. And I think very well said. And what I really understand from your talks is that you've had your series of ups and downs in the catering business. Do you remember that one time when you thought that, wow, I'm not doing the catering business anymore, I'm going to go back to my restaurants completely? And how did you come up with that? How did you overcome that feeling, and what happened after, really?
So I think in catering there are two things that kind of are almost like bottlenecks or certain things that keep making you think that you want to kind of do something else or do that. I think one of the biggest things is that I've been fortunate enough to be able to do multiple businesses, but whenever you do every single event, every customer would like you to be personally there and personally a part of their celebrations and personally a part of the menu making sessions, right? Now, if you can have a team of people who kind of follow what you do, are an extension of what you do, and think like what you do, and most importantly, have freedom to go out and make the mistakes that you have made yourself, um, that would be, I think, a much easier way for you to think that you want to kind of continue in that business. I think that is something that the only thing that makes me get out is if somebody absolutely insists that I have to be a part of the menu making session, and we are a very very large company, and I think that I am not alone in this. Our team is what makes us, right? And I think that if our customers realize that they also, when they interact with the chef directly, the chef directly understands what they like. So if they have a meeting with my chef, or if they have a meeting with the general manager, they will understand what they want. They know that Pandit ji ki thali 5 baje lagani hai, right? Something as simple as that, right? In the meeting with me, that might not come out. With a chef, they might be able to say that chef घी कम रखो और मिर्ची कम रखो क्योंकि हमारे गेस्ट को अच्छा नहीं लगता, right? Or to a chef, they might ask that there must be an option of a pulka and a yellow dal for certain guests who are not adventurous, right? So a chef understands those things. So I think if you are able to create a company, I think you'll be a lot more successful. The more you try and keep control in your own hands, the more you'll want to try and get out of the business. So that was one, and the other main issue in our industry, so to speak, is payments become a challenge. A lot of people expect large days of credit, and a lot of people don't end up paying post the celebrations. There are cases in which we have not got money for years. For the last 5 years, there is somebody who has not paid us, and we keep following up with people, and it becomes a challenge. People try and cut money post the event. People try and have 1,200 to 1,500 people with a guarantee of 1,000 people. I think those are the few times that a few people, and I'm not saying everybody is like that. I would say 90% of customers are fantastic, but the 10% of the people who try and take advantage, that's where you feel you want to get out. So when you're younger and when you're newer, a lot of people take advantage of you and tell you that listen, you do a good job, and I will pay you very well.
Yeah. Or recommend you to the others.
Right, right. And we'll recommend you to the others. And what ends up happening is
Yeah.
that because you're young, you say, listen, I need this business. I'll take the risk of credit. I'll get the money later. And if the customer doesn't pay, what do? Your suppliers will start knocking at your door. Everybody will start kind of, wanting their payments. And what ends up happening is that will dishearten you tremendously. So times when you
Right.
don't get paid, and you've done a great job, I think that is obviously disheartening, and you want to kind of exit when things like that happen.
Absolutely. So that brings me to a very interesting question. How does one make their first million in the catering business? I want to say in your case would be probably a day, but let's try and be a little modest here and understand how does one make their first million in the wedding business, wedding catering business particularly.
So I think, Guinea, um, we would like to say that milestones like a million are not necessarily the milestones you should have, right? If you ask me how do you make your first million, I'll come back to you and say, why not? Why didn't you say how do you make your first billion, for example, right? The value of money is changing. So somebody who's watching this 10 years from now will think a million is not so much money, and their goals should be a lot bigger. I think what the goals should definitely be is how do you uh, grow your company? How do you increase your business? How do you keep 100 days of the year occupied? So I think in the catering business, one of the best things that you can do is to give your staff work every single day. And if you're able to achieve 200 days a year of uh, of work in catering, I would say that's your first million. I think more than the actual number of million, the fact that you have work every single day, of a reasonable period. If you discount your Mondays and Tuesdays, and you discount the very, very peak summer months, 200 days is a lot. 200 days is the number of days a child goes to school, for example. So,
Yeah,
so, so,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
200 days a year is what your target should be. So your first target should be, I want to have work 100 days a year, and then the next target should be 200 days a year. And of course, the eventual target is that, 366 days a year should be when you need to have work, where you have work every single day of the year. So I think money wise, is not the approach we should have. I think the even $1 million is very less money. You could get $10 million or $20 million if you want to talk in dollars. So that's not what we should look at. I definitely think we should look at having work every day. And I think that's our real million
Super.
in the
Thank you so
catering
much.
industry.
Great advice, Varun. Thank you so very much. So, Varun, do tell me, what is the most innovative menu you've done for a wedding and how did you go about achieving it?
So Guinea, we've done a menu, where we did the food by the theme. So we did a menu where we did an entire theme of Mughal emperors, for example, right, in Hyderabad, where we did the food from, uh, the era of all the Mughal emperors, from Humayun to Babur. We kind of had,
Wow.
Akbar, Shah Jahan, Bahadur Shah Zafar, etc., etc., and we had the food of their era. So it wasn't only Indian food, it wasn't only North Indian food, it wasn't only Mughlai food, it was Mughlai food of the period of the Mughals. So from
Wow.
very heavy Persian influences to, looking at the vegetarianism of Akbar, and looking at that period, to the extremely non-vegetarian period of Bahadur Shah Zafar, etc., and various styles of food that we got inspired from Persia. We got the various types of food where we had inspiration from Persia. I think that was very, very interesting. We did a menu where we did, rather than focus on cuisines, we focused on the ingredients, and we had the menu segregated by chilies, greens, dairy, lentils, fruits, and flowers,
Wow.
and where each section had its own. Every dish had a green element, or every dish had chilies in there, right? So that was quite interesting. And a third style that we would have done is where we did 100% sit down, where there was no buffet or live station, and we had people sitting where a chef would prepare exactly what they would want to order. So almost like a chef's table, but for all 1,000 guests.
Sounds really, really huge. And I think it's something that we as Indian weddings don't really experience a lot, but I think the trend seems to be heading there now. So, Varun, do you feel like these intimate weddings now post COVID, the intimate weddings would set a new trend in the wedding industry?
Yeah, so I think firstly, if you had a budget to do 1,000-person wedding, and now you've got to do it for 50 people, even if coronavirus has affected your finances a bit, I still think that you would do, probably spend what you might spend on 300 people on 50 people. So I think that the quality of what people will want will go up far greater. People will scrutinize exactly the experience that is going to their guests. They will want the very best, the absolute very best for their kids, right? I think they'll come in and experience a new era of weddings that the West has learned to experience, where intimate weddings is what kind of sets the West apart from us. They feel that weddings should be celebrated with only your close friends and only your close family, and I think that is something that would kind of come in. So I think the 50 or 100 or 200-person wedding, whatever number that kind of average falls at, or even a 200 is intimate in India. The fact that you can celebrate with every single person who means something to you is a very different experience than standing on stage and whispering to your parents that उस आंटी का नाम क्या था. you know so so there are two different types of weddings. In a wedding you might not know all the people you've invited, and a wedding where you pretty much are best friends or family with the 50 people who are attending, right? So I think the quality of what you'd want to give your closest people is something that would change.
The sky's the limit now, really. So, I mean, and also I think COVID has sort of brought in a lot of, I think, discussions based on food hygiene, safety, and all of that going around. And I think, though every catering business, I mean, every business or restaurant for that matter, food hygiene and safety was the priority in the beginning itself. Like that, those were the parameters for any business. But are there any changes in this now since the COVID's come in the? I mean, now since we are in the COVID era, do you see there is a change in how the food safety and hygiene would be taken care of as parameters?
So Guinea, we've also had the good fortune of catering in many countries. We've catered in 12 different countries, and one of the biggest things that separates another country apart from India is that a lot of them focus on a certification called HACCP, which is a very specific hygiene-related certification which monitors not only the people who are cooking but also how food is stored, how food is labeled, packaged, stored, how long the food can last going forward. For example, if you have a trash can, you can't store food on above the trash can, for example, right? Even if it's on 4 shelves above. So there are various, kind of rules that kind of come in. In India, the government has been very lenient, and they've allowed almost self assessment. So I think what COVID will do is I think bring everybody to the same platform. And we have always prided ourselves on hygiene, and what ends up happening with that is that we have to charge a little bit more from our customers because we have to follow certain protocols. And there are certain caterers or certain people who may have just started and may not be aware of all the standards that exist internationally, that would have the advantage of pricing because they don't really follow all the norms, right? So I think this will make an even playing field for a lot of people, that the people who need to follow hygiene are following hygiene, because at the end of the day, you feed something bad to 1,000 people, that's putting 1,000 lives at risk. And I think more than even coronavirus, if somebody with coronavirus enters a wedding of 1,000 people, they may infect 25, 30, 50, or 100 people. But if you serve a bad dish, you'll infect all 1,000 people, right? So the point is that I think that we anyways had our hygiene standards. You know, we had to uplift
at par with the international certification. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It has to be international standards. Everything has to come into international standards, and this will just speed up the process. And I think, to be fair, many people in our industry had already been following these standards, and a lot of people who have been exposed to the international kitchens, and I think this will just make it a lot easier for the international standards to be followed and understood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that I think all of us want to sort of understand is like people in the wedding business, because there'll be a lot of wedding professionals who'll be watching and hearing this podcast. I wanted to ask you that a client usually expects a tasting menu before they finalize a caterer in the wedding business. Do you think that still be the trend? That still be the trend? Because even if it's an intimate wedding, you have only 50 to say 100 people to sort of feed in a wedding. Do you still feel a catering owner, a business owner, should follow those same protocol to book a wedding? Does fooding really do that as well? Offering a tasting menu first before they actually close down for a private for the full wedding?
We don't encourage that at all. Actually, what we do is we let people, you know, have a list of the dates that weddings are available at, and we ask the host if they would mind if somebody visits for a tasting. And I really do encourage people to try out the food at an actual event. I think that gives them a clear idea of what the food would taste like, and it does two things. I think um, I definitely think that it takes a lot of effort to try and have a tasting, and for a small caterer to have a tasting for 20 people when they are pitching for a wedding of 1,000 and eventually getting just a 50% function, that to complimentary, I think is a little difficult to kind of get to that level. So I think the easiest thing to do if you already have an event to just offer the tasting at the event.
Super great. I think that's very a good advice. I think a lot of people in the business are reinventing the wheel. They're trying to see how they stay relevant during these COVID times, and also, of course, after as well. So that brings us to the end segment, like the last segment of our podcast. I think we've had some really great discussions, but this rapid fire round is my favorite because this will get put you in a spot a little, and we'll get to probably get some nice replies on all our questions. So nothing personal, something we're trying to do is completely candid. You can choose to ignore the question if you like, but they're very simple and straightforward, really. Shall we begin?
Sure.
Okay, my first question. Your favorite cuisine?
Spanish.
If you were not in the food business, what would it be?
Uh, uh, I would probably be a tech billionaire.
And your current lockdown obsession?
Sourdough.
Sourdough. I think I've seen you make those on your Instagram quite a bit. We want to have a taste of that as well.
Yes.
What is more satisfying for you? Sorry, the business of weddings or restaurants?
I would actually say the business of just feeding. I don't think, I would like to classify it as wedding or restaurants. And in fact, we want to get into food retail now. We want to be in grocery stores as well. So I think just feeding, the business of feeding is what kind of excites me.
That's fantastic. Your favorite chef and why?
So I've always been a big fan of Thomas Keller. I think Thomas Keller has been one of my favorites. I think because of what he does in terms of his precise methods. I love Massimo Bottura. I think the fact that he can take a regular cuisine and kind of take it forward to a very uh, you know to a very strong kind of level in his cuisine, and look at memories that people have from childhood. I think these are the two chefs I would regard as my inspirations.
Super. Your favorite food destination?
The US. I think more than anything, I think the diversity that the US gives you, from the very, very authentic to the very, very innovative is what I love. And being such a large country, I think across the US, I would say you get some of the best food experiences.
Super. And the most overrated food destination, according to you?
The most overrated food. So I think I found good food almost anywhere and everywhere. I'm not sure. I actually thought Sri Lanka was very overrated. I would not, I thought I expected a lot more. I'd heard a lot more about the kind of food that you would get there. So I thought Sri Lanka was a bit overrated.
The most overrated restaurant, according to you? This could be international or Indian.
So I think
You could have your
I think one
reasons.
of No, right. So even though I respect, the chef a lot, I actually thought that, I went to a restaurant called Alinea in Chicago, which a chef called Grant Achatz runs, and I had good fortune of even kind of eating with him in his kitchen. And in fact, Massimo Bottura was there that same night as well, and I thought it was highly overrated. I actually had been waiting many years to kind of eat at that restaurant, and I think just the fact that you had to wait so long to get in, kind of lets you down right in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that
Okay.
I
Okay.
thought was
Overrated.
yeah.
Okay. So one cuisine you wish people in India could be introduced to at weddings.
I definitely think Indian cuisine. I think people are ignoring Indian cuisine a lot. I think there is so much regional Indian food that exists in India that I think that to try and get to states like Bihar, states like Odisha, certain southern states, interiors, certain parts of Kashmir, such phenomenal food exists. Interiors of Punjab, people just know the basics. They know Amritsari kulcha, sarson ka saag. They don't know katlama, for example, or they don't know some phenomenal biryanis from the interiors of Kerala, or certain elements of Kashmiri Pandit cuisine, for example, right? So certain ingredients, for example, I think Indian ingredients are so phenomenal. Like there are prawns from Odisha that are unbelievable, and I think I wish that people could experience the vegetables, the ingredients, the kind of cultures from the interior of India. I think that's required.
Okay. One wedding planner that you really enjoyed working with recently.
I think we share a love and hate kind of relationship with most wedding planners. I think we are very demanding as caterers. So I think that most wedding planners kind of would
Give
would
me
would,
one
would
name.
kind of.
Let me push the button a little. Give me one name.
I think we enjoy working with all of them. I think we enjoy working with all of
Who's
them,
your
and
favorite
we,
then?
we
Let me just say that.
I I would not I don't want to kind of I don't want to kind of get into that too much, but I think there are some great companies out there that are doing really well. I think the smaller companies are the ones we really enjoy working with, because the younger generation is very very passionate about what they do. I think they are open to new ideas and new experiences, and I think any wedding company that makes an effort to create a new experience for a customer is what a company that we'd love to work with, and a company that may not be in tune with what their customer wants and are very hell bent on what they want to give is somebody who I would not like to work with. So I think, let's be diplomatic. Like I said, love and hate with almost everybody, and the fact is that it is a little difficult to demand as a caterer certain experiences, certain layouts. For example, a designer would have come in and kind of made a complete layout, and as a caterer, when you come in and disrupt that is disheartening for a designer and a planner.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
So finding the right
caterers
balance
are
and
yeah. So caterers are being invited to come in to do things like layouts right in the beginning, but a lot of customers will come in and pick the caterer right at the end, a month before their wedding, and try and fit them into the planning that was already done. So I think if all the stakeholders in a wedding are invited at the same time, I think that will be a lot nicer and easier for everybody to kind of work
your
with.
one advice to the new age food entrepreneurs?
I think the only advice that I have to give is, don't be stuck on weddings. Don't be stuck on a size of of uh, of a number. So don't say I want to do 1,000-person wedding, and don't even be stuck on the fact that you want to do the entire cuisine. I think there's so many opportunities. I think the dessert, for example, there's so many opportunities. You could just be a dessert caterer or a mithai caterer, for example, and you would be able to do 20 weddings a day, rather than try and pitch to a wedding a day every day. So I definitely think to try and find your niche and try and figure out what exists and what gaps there are in the market that people are enjoying. Don't ignore what people are enjoying, and don't run after what it seems elusive to you. It might be elusive because it might not be worth it. So what comes easily is what you should actually go after. Don't try too hard.
Great. That's great advice. Passion or skills? What do you need the most to survive this industry?
So I think the passion to develop skills. I think that's really the kind of thinking that is required, because without passion, you will not spend that much time trying to acquire a skill, and without the actual skill, it becomes very difficult. Food is very technical sometimes. You can't just mix a few things in a pot and expect it to turn out good. You've got to understand ingredients. You've got to understand flavor. You've got to understand temperature. There are various things that you've got to understand when you cook food. So I think trying to acquire skills, and if you're open to acquiring skills, I think that will really make you successful. And it goes by, it's not just food. So catering is not just about food. It's also about service. It's also about an experience that you're giving your guests, right? So trying to figure out how to hold a tray, for example, as a caterer, is a skill that you should have, so that you can actually teach your waiters how to hold a tray, right? Or polishing shoes. All your shoes should be polished, your hair should be cut. There are so many things that are skills that exist. So I think attention to detail is something that is very important.
Super great. That brings us to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you for making the time. It was one of the first podcasts we've ever had. So thank you for being our first guest. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and helping us dig deeper into the nuances of the catering world. Thank you once again, Varun.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, listeners. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We will be back with an exciting conversation with yet another celebrated wedding industry icons. Till then, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.